My dad passed away on Friday the 2nd of August, and Monday was the funeral in Cape Town. And because my dad was Reformed, the funeral was slightly different to what the Orthodox funerals are, and we were allowed to make eulogies. So Rabbi Newman of Temple Israel made a beautiful eulogy, and then I was allowed to as well. So that was really very, very heartwarming for me to be able to say some words about my father. I thought I'd share that with you today. So this is what I said. I'm going to add in a few things because Rabbi Newman spoke about my father's chess life and his Temple Israel life, and I wasn't going to speak about that, so today I will. My father led a full and rich life. Being a connoisseur of words, he could look beyond the literal, so this is what I would like to do today. Full is what he achieved, and rich is what he was blessed with. My dad's achievements were many and varied. Over the years, I've made quite a few speeches in which I've recounted them. So this is the part that I have to add in today. My dad, his Temple Israel life was very full in that he rose to be the president of Temple Israel for many years. He ran Shiurim. He was the editor of the magazine that came out every year, the Rosh Hashanah Annual. He was very well respected in that he represented the shul in lots of inter-shul meetings and committees that he was on, and he was the mentor for people who were converting, and he was very important in their development. In fact, my grandfather, his father, was a founding member in the 1940s of Temple Israel, and apparently he said to my dad, "You either want to be Orthodox or Reformed, choose." And my dad went with him and became Reformed from the 1940s onwards.
Can I interject?
Yes.
Okay, so just say what your uncle Claude and Ray were.
His siblings stayed Orthodox, and he went to Reform with his dad. Yeah.
Okay.
As regards his chess life, well, I think everybody here knows that he was the president of the South African Chess Federation. He wrote many chess books, and I put them there. This was his opus, The History of Chess in South Africa. Yeah, and he wrote that
It'll improve your
from
chess.
Jan van Riebeeck until the 1940s, The History of Chess in South Africa. From Jan van Riebeeck times. And he was the editor of the South African Chess magazine, which he started. It was called the South African Chess Player. Started in the 50s, I think just before I was born. Went on until about the 1980s, and he ran a regular column. He had the biggest library for an individual of chess books in the Southern Hemisphere at one stage. And Sunday mornings, people used to come over and have a kibbutz, as they called it, about chess. In fact, Renish's brother Nathan.
Yeah. So my brother used to go, he was a young student and he was interested in chess, so he used to go every Sunday morning to Jill's house around the corner, and he used to watch all the older people playing and pick up tips, and to this day he attributes his success in chess to sitting around and watching what's going on, and he's now played with his kids, and as far as the South African chess player is concerned, we used to sit when we were growing up and help him put the chess player into the envelope with the stamp around the dining room table. It was a whole family affair.
Yeah.
To stamp them, sorry?
Put stamps on.
Sorry.
Yes.
Did you cup any of the stamps for home?
Definitely not.
These were two obituaries that were in the Cape Argus and the Cape Times in the weeks following, and if anyone's interested, I've got them here, that were written by people who knew my dad. Okay. So, Dad was the full bottle on all types of crosswords, a cruciverbalist, as he referred to himself. He could see a word or a phrase beyond just what it stood for, but what it represented. He was a man of great intellect, blessed with a sharp mind and erudition. His general knowledge was wide and often obscure, Well, it had to be if he could complete cryptic crosswords and other word games in record time. In his working life, whether it was at Bloomberg and Kleinman, which was the wholesale place where he worked for many years, and many people would have bought their crockery and cutlery and tea sets there, or in his later years for the Jewish Board of Deputies, Dad gave his full attention to his job. The handsome and charming man in the dapper suit and never without a tie. In his later years, Dad's always deep love of classical music brought him to the world of soirees. He so enjoyed researching the old-fashioned way, encyclopedias and tomes, and then earnestly imparting his knowledge of the fullness and richness of the beautiful music to his captive audience. Some of you might remember that after Dean and Tammy's wedding, we held a soiree here. And I think everybody fell asleep during the soiree also. Actually, it wasn't Dean and Tammy's wedding, it was Neil and Joe's wedding, because that was the one that
And
was
those who don't remember very well, it was actually strip poker. Guess who won?
Many eulogies are about the where and when of a loved one's early years, school and education, and other biographical details. I want to talk about what made Dad's life rich. And this is Leonard, the man. We've all received, that is my family and me, we've all received so many kind words of condolence and comfort about the modest, humble, and beautiful human being that was my dad. But what stands out most of all is the description of him in one word, gentleman. Dad was blessed with the ability to want to hear what others had to say, always patient and respectful. His quick comebacks, his one-liners and his repartee were pretty funny, and they never left him in old age. His marriage to Dal, my mom Ruth, for 65 and a half years, was filled with love, devotion and dedication. And of course, you all know, maybe you don't, but many people know that he actually never learned to play bridge or how to put a flower into an oasis. And nor could my mom play chess. Towards Ant, my brother, or Titus as he was called, and Michelle, lass, and me, girl, he was the best kind of father possible. In his quiet, calm manner, the voice of reason, we knew we could always count on him. To his 5 grandchildren, lads and girl, Dean, Neil, Jay, Ethan and Kyle, Grandpa Leonard was someone to challenge with discussions and questions about anything from his wide range of interests and knowledge, spanning maths. He could actually add up huge numbers without a calculator. You know, like, what's a calculator? Cricket, horses, horse racing, very interested in horse racing, history, religion, music, literature, languages, and words. Dad was blessed with 7 great-grandchildren, and he was really in awe of this fact, not quite believing that such a legacy was possible. Dad is the last of this Reitstein family. His sister Ray in Israel and brothers Claude and Morris have passed away in the last few years. They were always very close and devoted siblings. Richness of family meant the world to Dad. I want to say one last word from my sister Michelle, who recounted this at prayers, which we had on the first night at her home. Last week, after Mom had reminded Dad yet again, Leonard, your stick, he did not like to use his walking stick at all. We were walking through the corridors of Highland's house. My dad looked at my mom, then down at her stick. He glanced at his own stick and said something I'll never forget. It was in Latin, tempus fugit. I asked, what does that mean, Dad? And with a deep look in his eyes, he replied, it means... Anyone?
Time flies.
Time flies. The precious soul of Leonard that touched our lives and so enhanced its sense of purpose is no more. Sorry. The ache in our hearts will take time to heal, but our memories will be full and rich forever.
Very nice.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
Thank you.
Well done, John.
Thank you.
Not bad.
I'm sure all of those who've lost parents can understand what everybody goes through. And I can understand what you've all been through, because this was my first time.
I'm very impressed that you managed to get through it here without
Yes.
crying. But at the funeral,
Yeah.
amazing.
I've actually said this 4 times now. I did it at the funeral, and then they asked me to say it again at Highlands House on the second night prayers. And I'm telling you, the place was absolutely packed. People had never seen the shul so full. It's a beautiful shul if anyone's ever been there. Real traditional Orthodox shul. And everybody was amazing and very moved. And then they had something else which you might find interesting at Highlands House. It's called a compassion circle. And our first reaction was, oh, you know, like one of those Alcoholics Anonymous sharing sessions, but it wasn't like that at all. And there was a huge turnout of people who came to one of the lounges, which they held it in, and there must have been over 50 people there. And it started off with the social worker welcoming everybody, and then she asked me to read the eulogy again, which I did, and I did it very slowly and loudly so that they could all hear me. And then she opened the floor to people to recount their experiences over the last 2 years with my dad, as well as a couple of people who knew him from long, long, long ago, including Esme Marks, who met my mom in the 1950s when she was pregnant with me and Esme was pregnant with Iva. And she's there now. And so there were quite a few people from those days, as well as newish friends. And it was just beautiful, including 2 of the carers who had the most wonderful things to say and were most articulate. And so it turned out to be a really beautiful experience to have that. And it was very comforting for everybody.
Explain also on the Friday afternoon or Friday when the kids from St. Sips used to come across.
Oh yeah, at this Highlands House in Cyprian School, which is across the road. And by coincidence, my father loved to tell the story that his mother taught for 1 term, she taught English at St. Cyprian School back in 1928 when she was pregnant with him, or 27 or whatever. She actually taught at that school. Anyway, they have a Friday afternoon session where they send kids over to play games with the elderly people across the road. And so there were a group of kids who used to play chess with my dad. So I'll tell you, until the Thursday morning before my dad passed away, he was still playing his chess. He had gone to shiur and had participated and had a bit of an argument with Rabbi Newman about something that he didn't agree with. And he was just amazing and fine. So he went the best way that anybody could ever
It's a royal
lived.
death.
Yeah,
Still
91 years.
Still living a good life.
Yes, yes.
Amazing.
So his last move was what?
His last
Checkmate.
move was checkmate, definitely.
He was checkmated.
As far as
Took the
my
king out.
memory goes back,
Never lost the queen.
Jill's dad's in it because I've known Jill ever since I was 3. So
Yeah.
That wasn't long ago, was it?
yesterday.
Few months.
Feels like yesterday.
Actually, Michelle and Anthony each threw a white king and a black king into the soil as they were filling the grave. They just wanted to do that. And that was really very special.
And now somebody's looking for those pieces.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you might as well have thrown the whole setting. It's useless for ourselves.
Well, we will do something else.
So the game that never ended.
Well, he never lost the queen.
No.
No, he didn't lose his queen.
Yes.
When you heard other people talking about your dad, what did you hear? Were there things that were
Well,
different from
no.
your own experience and knowledge?
The one woman said he used to flirt with her.
So your mum was
Like kids, it's one of the issues that we have at the home.
What?
It's a real problem. There's a lot of people are very, very,
Sensitive.
really, I'm telling you.
It's flirtatious.
But it's fine, it's fantastic. I think
In a
it's
very
wonderful.
gentlemanly way. But now that you're asking me, the carer, Dorothy, spoke
Ubi.
beautifully, and she used the metaphor of a fire burning brightly, and eventually it dies down and the embers glow, and that was the soft warm glow of my father's aura, permeating the room and the home and people around him. I mean, she requested quite a long time to explain it, but that's what she meant in essence.
But occasionally there would be a big fire.
Yeah, occasionally. And then another carer said that they had a little thing going between the two of them. He would hook his arm into hers, and it was actually quite a long walk from the dining room to my parents' room, and he would every single time say, "Oh, this is the long walk to freedom," and they'd have a little laugh about it because of the Mandela connection, and then he'd get to the door and say to her, "And now that's the end of my freedom."
I think he's very fortunate that he spent his last years at Howard's house and surrounded by people who knew him from years and years ago. And to have that support.
It's unusual.
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. It was beautiful.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So Jill wants me to move into.
Tomorrow, I've actually got 2 rooms available.
I'll just compare that to.
For the next 30, 50 years. Well done, Julie.
Pleasure. And
It
on
takes
that note,
lots of courage.
please go now and
And eat. Finish the food. Finish the food, please.
or a shops over there, and please have some more food so that you don't have to have dinner.
What did your dad do at the company?
Oh, okay. He was an accountant. So he was and his official title there was a company secretary at Bloomberg Claimant. He worked there most of his working life was there. Then he worked for a short while because they sold out. He worked in jewellery for a while. And in fact, this ring, Bloomberg and Claimant used to deal in diamonds. So Eli got a wholesale price for the diamond.
And the check bounced.
You know, in chess they changed the way they used to express the moves. Did he move to the new format?
Yes, I'm sure he would.
Can I walk through?
Yeah,
I'm sure he
fine.
would. But I
Yeah,
can't
no,
answer.
you can. It's fine.
Which way are you coming back?
But that sounds familiar, Frank. I'm pretty sure he would have done whatever.
Because I can only work with the old
The old
one.
one.
What do you mean by that? Frank, what do you mean by that? What do you mean change the moves?
They changed the way you express a move. So it was pawn to king 4, and now they talk about e4.
It says E4.
Yeah.
So you got A, B, C, D at the bottom, and 1, 2, 3, 4 up the side, and the move is now e4.
Does it help your game?
I can't get that. I'm still thinking it's the pawn that goes
Yeah, here we go.
Queen
Yeah.
4.
This came from one of his books. And it is B and E and 3 and
It's the new
Queen times 4, MD7. So that's a queen. Yes, the D, which would have been a rook or whatever.
So Frank, you didn't answer the question.
Yeah.
How's your game improved?
Right?
How's your game improved?
One could do it a bit. I actually played at school. David Friedgood was the South African chess champion.
Absolutely, I knew him well. Grew up with him.
And I had lessons with him. And he once played about 50 of us together. Simultaneously. And I was one of the last half dozen left.
Yeah,
Really?
How did you remember the moves?
You know what was interesting? He walked around and you do 2 moves, 1 move, 1 move. While he was going, I was busy with my thinking, well, if I go here, and he came back round to me and he looked at it and he said, no, this piece was there and this piece was there. I put it back in the wrong place.
Wow. Yeah, exactly. In fact, now that you mention it, when it was Neil's bar mitzvah, and my dad was here, Neil and Mark Van Proctor were very, very involved, and so were Lynn and myself, with the Dianella Chess Club. And we organised a simultaneous for my dad to play. In fact, one of the photos on there, he did. And Neil was very proud because that was his grandpa playing the simultaneous for all the kids there. And he went around and he played.
Did he beat
Yeah,
them all?
it's not only he played as well as.
Did he beat them all?
I mean, he met people in his chess career, being president of the Chess Federation and the captain of chess that went overseas, the Olympiad teams. He met Fidel Castro. There's a lovely picture of him shaking hands with Fidel Castro. He went to Cuba. He was the captain of the South African team that took the players. He didn't play on that trip. And he met people from B.J. Forster to Fidel Castro, to all the top players, and he brought them out to South Africa when it was like unheard of for people to come to South Africa because of apartheid in chess.
Well, in Donald Woods' book, what was it called?
Asking for Trouble.
Asking for Trouble. Remember him? He was the editor of the Daily Dispatch. Yes, and that was just before we got married.
Yeah.
And in actual fact, they had this meeting in Switzerland, Lucerne, and South Africa wasn't actually thrown out. They were going to be thrown out. But
my
I think
dad and Donald went to plead the case that there was also no apartheid in chess in South Africa.
They also went with the colour guy. What was his name? Bowers or something?
Despite the fact that they're black and white pieces.
Yeah.
Yes. and the point.
Convinced them.
And the funny thing that I said in my speech was that they told them that we were getting married, so they had to get this meeting over and done with. So
you got back the day before
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there you go. Okay.
Anybody else want to know anything? Yeah, in the words of former SA champion David Greenwood, Leonard Reitstein was in the 1970s truly South Africa's Mr. Chess. The background is player, correspondence player, organizer, chess book collector, author, above all editor and publisher of the South African Chess Player.
So how can we let me marry you?
He was hoping that you would become a chess player.
I had the money.
Obviously you had the money.
Yeah.
You played the Queen's Gambit.
It must have been wonderful for Mum to hear everybody's
Yeah, it was. It was
thoughts.
beautiful. A lot of people stood up.
It's really lovely.
My sister came. She left work early and she came and she said, I'm not going to say anything. I'm not going to say anything. Let me tell you, by the end of it, she was also standing up and talking.
Well,
And giving her feelings.
Well, that's an amazing thing. To retain your composure. I could never do that. I think it's a very great tribute to your dad.
The soirees that he used to run were great, including when your uncle helped him
my
towards
uncle
it.
Morris, my late Uncle Morris in Melbourne, the two of them were mad about their classical music, and in their very later years they had soirees in Melbourne and in Cape Town. And one year Morris was in Cape Town, it was probably only 4 or 5 years ago, and they had one together. It was beautiful. We happened to be there.
And I remember
No, it was more than 4 years.
the one year I introduced high tech to these soirees. You can imagine my father-in-law with his DVD and his records and whatever. So I came and I did the whole thing on my phone, my iPhone, and they couldn't get over it.
Yes,
and all the people that came along, they were more interested in the Tuscans than
really went so into the music, but the technology, they couldn't get over it.
Wow.
No, I don't think my dad ever did it with vinyl. I think he did it always on CDs.
on CDs. Yeah.
But he'd have to scratch and put the CD on, and then it got tangled or whatever.
But
happened
he
to
was
CDs.
very methodical. He had,
Yeah, he
the
did
start
have
and the
spots.
end point, and
It was quite good.
I was his assistant for a while.
Amazing.
But, the soirees, when he gave a little description of the music and why it was important and why it was beautiful.
It's amazing.
He even played one once with which we introduced him to, a symphony which has a didgeridoo in it.
Oh.
It's quite a well-known. Julian, you know
I
it,
think
I'm
we've
sure.
heard it before.
Yeah, so that one I remember he played once, or extract from it.
Amazing.
I forget the soloist's name, Richard something.
An Aboriginal name?
Yes.
Not Jesse John Flay.
No.
It's interesting, I'll just open this page, talking about music and chess. I'll just read this one paragraph. At first blush, there would seem to be more antithesis than analogy between chess and music. Chess is uncompromising and intellectual, music largely sensual. Chess appeals to the reasoning faculties, music to the auditory. An audience may enjoy a musical composition without being at all aware of the idea, if any, which its composer intended to convey. Chess is all idea, and the player's or solver's whole appreciation depends upon his correct perception of the idea. Music, when it is not being martial, vulgar, or merely noisy, lulls the mind. Chess stimulates it.
And just to add to that, at the end of one of the eulogies, one of the newspaper obituary, this person named Mark Tymanoff, who is a chess player. When I was playing chess, I was resting from music. And if I was making music, I was taking a rest from chess. In other words, my entire life has been one long holiday. How's that?
That is beautiful.
Did you bring these books back with you, Jill, or were they
No,
here?
these are my own copies of stuff that I've had.
So what's happened to his library?
His library was very much sold off where we could. And there's a member of the parliament there named Lyndon Bauer. He is an advocate and a doctor. So he's advocate doctor or doctor advocate. Which way? I think advocate doctor, Lyndon Bauer. And he is a chess expert himself and a great lover of chess. And he'd known my father for a long time. He's a man in his late 40s, early 50s, a coloured man who's a member of parliament there in the Western Cape. Anyway, when we were packing up 2 years ago in my father's, the library had already been condensed considerably because they moved into a flat 25 years before. He asked if he could buy what was left over, and so we sold him what we could, but I gave him the memorabilia. And the plan was to have either at UCT or somewhere some kind of exhibition or room or a dedicated area which would be the Leonard R. Reitstein room, book area or library, whatever they want to call it. And he was planning to digitize everything. I don't know how far he got with the digitizing,